Welcome everyone to another episode of The Damage Report with me, John Idarola, and we're very lucky to be joined on this chaotic show. I'll break all the chaos down by Yasmin Khan, contributor Rebel HQ, as well as content creator in her own right. How's it going?
It's going very well. I'm happy to be here to deal with all the chaos with you.
Yes. So people in America definitely, I think, are familiar with this. California is in the middle of what I would describe as a portal that is open to the elemental plane of water. And a gigantic arm of a massive elemental is sweeping across our state right now. And so there's a little bit of chaos as a result of that. I actually made the executive decision this morning to not drive to work because a week or two ago, when it wasn't even nearly as bad rain, there was a section where you were driving through standing water to get there. Didn't really want to do that, there's flooding. And then we found out that power went out at the studio. So it was probably a good decision. I don't know, are you guys caught in this atmospheric river? How's Texas doing these days?
No, we're fine. It's actually lovely here, which never happens. We've had a beautiful few days in Texas here, at least in Houston. I've been hearing about what's been going on in LA, and it's funny because I feel like I always end up in Los Angeles in January, and every time I go in January, it's a nightmare. There's rain everywhere, and so I never really get that whole LA vibe that I'm after. Yeah. But I'm glad that I'm here. So sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm glad they're here. Texas, come for the great weather, stay for your rights to be taken away. Anyway, but yeah, no, I would be happy to not have the rain right now. We could use it in general in California.
Bit of a toss-up, yeah. A lot of mixed feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, there's a lot of news going on. I feel like I've been gone for about a week. We've got a new speaker, we've got a new scandal, we've got a lot, most importantly, to discuss on the show today. So we're gonna jump into that in just a second. In advance of that, please hit the like button and share the stream so that people know we're live. And if you want to reach out to Yaz or myself, you can send us comments, tweets, and super chats, and we'll respond as we go. But with all that said, Yaz, are you ready to start the show?
Yeah, I'm ready if you are.
Okay, let's jump into some false equivalence. President Joe Biden has got a classified docs scandal of his own. And it is importantly, this is like sort of the top note for the story, the exact same thing that Donald Trump did. If you're a moron and don't care about nuance and don't read literally one word beyond the headline on any of this, but we're gonna dive into all of that, as well as the response from Republicans and Donald Trump, opportunistic people, jackals really. Here are the details though. So the special counsel for President Biden confirmed, I believe it was late last night, that classified documents from his time as vice president had been discovered in a private office space and were turned over to the National Archives back in November. So the news is a little bit delayed by a couple of months. Here are a couple of notes, take them, as you will. Joe Biden wasn't aware the classified documents were located in the office, didn't become aware of them until his personal lawyers communicated their existence to the White House counsel's office. The special counsel, Richard Sauber, says the documents were discovered when the president's personal attorneys were packing files housed in a locked closet to prepare to vacate office space at the Penn Biden Center in Washington, D.C. The president periodically used this space from mid-2017 until the start of the 2020 campaign. On the day of this discovery, November 2nd, the White House counsel's office notified the National Archives. The archives took possession of the materials the following morning. The discovery was made by the president's attorneys. The documents were not the subject of any previous request or inquiry by the archives. Since that discovery, the president's personal attorneys have cooperated with the archives and the Department of Justice in a process to ensure that any of the records from back when he was VP were back in the possession of the archives. And so, as I said, same thing, obviously, Donald Trump had taken documents. He'd been raided as a result of it. Now Joe Biden has documents. And so if the only thing you care about is absolving Donald Trump from the legal consequences for his actions, this is the same thing. But I have thought about this, and I believe I've identified a few subtle differences. So one, the docs weren't being requested. So the Biden team had no idea that the docs were missing to be released, whereas with Donald Trump, they had been specifically requesting over and over and over again to get these specific documents. The documents weren't taken to Biden's home. They were in an actual working space. Now, we can debate whether he should be moving those documents to spaces he was working at as a VP, but I don't think any Republican previous to this would have said that that was a problem. So they were actually being brought to a place that he was working at. It was while he was VP, not being taken out the door on his way out the door to be brought back to his personal place. There's no indication that he ever knew they were there, whereas Donald Trump was very proud of the documents he had stolen and had refused to give them back repeatedly when specifically requested to do so. They were locked up while they were in that VP office, not just in a desk or in an unlocked storage room, despite requests to take the security seriously of the documents. Also, they're the ones who found them and they immediately gave them back rather than fighting giving them back over and over. And President Biden is not to this day continuing to say that him having them is not a problem, that he can just take whatever he wants, which Donald Trump continues to say to this day. So a couple of small differences. What do you think, Yas?
Oh my God, the Trump supporters specifically who are attempting to draw these false equivalencies. I mean, they're going off of something so weak, just the fact that these two people were in possession of classified documents. But the similarities really kind of end right there. And it's like what you were saying, Joe Biden, first of all, didn't know that he had them. Then when he found out that he did have them, he turned them over without incident. And it's not like he was subpoenaed repeatedly to give them back and then in defiance said no. Mm-hmm. And then even after the raid at his personal residence where these documents were found, he still had more. It's not the same thing. We're talking about two very different situations.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, the number was also far lower, but that doesn't particularly matter to me. If it was only 3 docs and I thought that President Biden had specifically stolen them for when he wasn't VP anymore, then sure. Yeah. No, I would probably have a problem with that. But it doesn't appear to be the case here.
Doesn't appear to be the case.
Yeah. As soon as they discovered that they have them, they gave them back. That is not what happened with Donald Trump.
That's such an important distinction, though. And that's the one distinction that people on the Republican side are going to continuously overlook or downplay, unfortunately.
Exactly. And you know what? Why don't we actually turn to that overlooking and that downplaying? Donald Trump, who is awaiting further developments in his own document scandal, of course, is going to jump into commenting on President Biden's document scandal, bleeding, wow, the Biden think tank is funded by China. Also, a VP cannot declassify documents, which are covered by the Federal Records Act, which is criminal and much tougher than the Presidential Records Act, which is not criminal. A president, me, can capital D declassify. How much information has China been given? So again, Biden is not claiming that he declassified the documents. His team is saying they had no idea they had them, and as soon as they found them, they gave them back. You are claiming that you declassified them. And let me be specific. When I say that you're claiming you declassified them, I mean that you're posting on social media that you declassified them. When you've been asked in court multiple times to give literally any evidence that you declassified any of these documents, your team has repeatedly refused to do that. I'm gonna speculate it's because they don't wanna lie in court and lose their law license. You did not actually declassify the documents. And let's be clear, even if it was shown that he had declassified some of the documents, other documents he had stolen were not his to declassify. They continually lie about this over and over and over again, but no matter how many times they do that, that doesn't make it true. And look, I wanna read one more message from his because it gets super weird. He says, Biden giving China highly classified documents would be a bridge too far. I certainly wouldn't do that. Not a good situation for our country to be in. I don't even know what he's talking about. Like, I get that most Republicans are perfectly satisfied right now to just talk about this, ignoring all of the nuance and detail that we've provided for you, and just imply, well, I guess they all do it, and so now there shouldn't be any consequences, forgetting the fact that before this scandal, they also said that there should be no consequences. And so, but for Trump, now we're supposed to imagine that he gave the documents to China. There's no evidence of that. He has the documents, he's already handed them back in. And then I certainly wouldn't do that. Why? Does this not seem, nobody was saying that you gave the documents to China, dude. What's going on in your mind right now, buddy? What are you thinking about? Because nobody was claiming that. Yeah, so what do you think?
This was so confusing to me when I first read it, and I was actually hoping that you would provide some insight, but no, it's such a weird, way to live our lives these days when people like Donald Trump, who is an ex-president, can just say things and the rest of us are like, did he just make that up or is that actually based in something? Like, we have to figure out, did he just pull that out of literally nothing or is it actually based in something? And sometimes we don't know. It's very, very hard to discern. And the China thing, sure, maybe you didn't give anything to China, but you probably gave it to somebody else, Donald Trump, and like we know that. And so it's like a weird deflection, especially with that investigation still ongoing. I don't know why he's saying anything at all.
I don't know. I might still make a video, at least for social, about this, but he really likes to re-truth people who make really low quality memes for him. There's this one woman, they're all blonde women, that he retweets, and one made a meme and it said, Donald Trump gave up his life of luxury to serve his country.
Did he?
Biden gave up his country for a life of luxury. The picture is Biden standing in front of the Chinese flag. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do with any of that. First of all, Donald Trump very clearly didn't give up his life of luxury. He lives in Mar-a-Lago. He kept going there constantly. He didn't divest himself from his businesses, and he remained a billionaire as president. Joe Biden is in government right now, so I don't know how he gave up his country, but even if he did, what life of luxury is he living? He rides the MTA.
He takes the Amtrak to work. That's what he's known for. He's a man of the people, Joe Biden. Oh my God, like it's
and what's the China thing? Does he live in China? Did I miss that news? I know that I've been preoccupied recently, but does he live in China?
I don't think so. Crazy narrative, especially like we still see Trump coming in and out of Trump Tower in New York City. Like he hasn't given up anything. The man doesn't know how to sacrifice anything for anyone. He would give up his own family just to save a few bucks on his taxes. Like we know who this person is. Who are any of them thinking that they are fooling? I have no idea.
They don't. And it's like an opportunistic meme but you guys don't want anyone to give up their life of luxury. You love that Trump is like luxurious or whatever. So why are you pretending that now living like a pauper is stop lying, just constantly stop lying. But anyway, all of this is obviously opportunistic. He also retweeted this guy, Clay Travis, who says the only possible way to ensure Joe Biden has no more illegal documents from his vice presidency is for the FBI to raid all of his residences and seize anything they want, including his passports. Our democracy is at stake. Anything less and we could all die, which is a great point. Again, because this is the same thing, except for all of the reasons we gave. Like Clay Travis has to pretend so that Donald Trump will notice him, that Donald Trump hadn't repeatedly been reached out to. As if what happened was Donald Trump left government, went to Mar-a-Lago, was playing some golf, and then out of the blue, the FBI kicked down his door, except that that's not what happened. They repeatedly, through the National Archives, through requests, through visits, tried to get the docs back, and they refused to give them. If Biden had held on to one afterward or something that we knew that he knew about and that he didn't want to give up, then you might have a point, but that hasn't happened because that's crazy because people don't do that. I am, however, willing to compromise. Investigate him. That's perfectly fine. Also investigate him. They will continually say today on Fox News, there's obviously two systems of justice, one for Biden and one for Trump. Well, first of all, I'd ask you a question. Which system of justice would you like? Do you want there to be consequences or not? Because if you're implying that you want Biden to be investigated, then you are saying that the investigation of Trump is acceptable, or you're saying there shouldn't be any investigations whatsoever. But if you really want to make that point and have it seem to have even a like tiny shred of integrity, then you have to say that Biden shouldn't be investigated. I will be consistent, look into both of them. I think there should be far more scrutiny into presidents and former presidents. I don't think that you actually want to sign on to that though, Fox News.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I know that a similar topic is going to be coming up later on the show as far as oversight of government officials. But the thing is, there is no downside to investigating Donald Trump if Republicans actually think that he was not doing anything that he shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And the Republicans who are now asking, like, where is the big dramatic raid of the Biden residence, like what we saw with Mar-a-Lago? We didn't need one, but like you mentioned, they really just underreported the fact that Trump had been subpoenaed numerous times by the National Archives, that he had been requested of those documents so many times, and he just didn't give them up. Joe Biden, that's not what happened here. It was discovered that he had stuff and he gave it over to the authorities. And then he said, I had this stuff, I didn't know I had it. And it's done. If there's anything more that would insinuate or suggest that he has more, then I'm sure that they will look into that, as they should. But as of right now, that isn't the case.
Yeah, 100%. And again, investigate, continue to investigate. Like talk to the National Archives and have them check to make sure, which they should be doing anyway, that nothing else is remaining that hasn't been handed in. Do that.
Yeah, and I
That
think
seems
that's a
perfectly
good
legitimate.
distinction also between Republicans and Democrats. Usually, it's at least I'll say anyone watching this show is that I don't think that we're afraid of those investigations. If Joe Biden is doing something wrong, even though most of us here voted for him, we still want to know if he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. And if he is caught doing something that he shouldn't have been doing, then we will say he shouldn't have been doing that. The difference is on the other side, they will back the guy to the end, regardless of all the evidence that's being put forth against him.
Yeah, 100%. I got to read one more. So there's a lot of defenses of Donald Trump. So Kevin McCarthy, I'm gonna jump to graphic 8, says President Trump had never been in office before and it just left, came out. Here's an individual who spent his last 40 years in office and still had this from the vice president. So first of all, okay, yeah, it was Donald Trump's first office. He'd held it for 4 years. Are you implying, Kevin McCarthy, that 4 years is not long enough for an elderly man to learn that he can't take classified documents? Oh, you need 2 terms at least, I guess, at that point. And then he had just left, came out. No, that's the issue. He came out of the White House with boxes of classified documents. You can have an issue with the Biden thing, but they were at an office that he worked at. That sort of makes sense. Boxing them up and taking them to your personal residence, no, but nobody actually thinks that that's acceptable. Some are just willing to overlook it because they don't care about the actual law. Ronnie Jackson says, it's just been discovered that Biden had highly classified documents that were improperly stored in one of his private. Well, they were locked up. Let's just be clear about that. They shouldn't have been in the office at all, but at least they were properly stored in the office. Incredible. Where is the FBI? Where is the dramatic raid? Again, you don't need the raid when you just willingly give in the documents. That's how you avoid that. That is something Donald Trump could have done. When they asked for the documents, he could have given them. You didn't want him to do that. That's what necessitated the raid. Fox and Friends says that it's ironic. I don't think that's the definition of ironic, but if Alanis Morissette songs is the limit of your understanding of the definition, then perhaps that seems ironic to you. I don't know. And here is where I think we'll end on. What Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy, or the Republicans or whatever say about these documents doesn't really matter. One, because they're lying. They're not gonna actually say what they mean. They're gonna say what is politically opportunistic. What the media says though, again, it's just gonna be so depressing. Because we already have on CNN, CNN analyst says to Poppy Harlow, well, this makes it almost impossible to charge Trump over the Mar-a-Lago raid. What are you talking about? First of all, let's say that in this fantasy land we've constructed, they did the same thing, which they didn't, that it sounds like we need to charge both. That is how that would actually work. Crimes don't generally cancel out. If I murder a member of your family and you murder a member of mine, we're not good. We're both bad at that point. And so, but again, it's not the same thing. Like we keep being told that the fact that Trump violated the law by having the documents is not enough. I think it should. They say it's not. Okay. Under my standard, Biden would be in more trouble. Under the standard they want, it's all about intent. Did you mean to steal? So what was your frame of mind? It all goes into your brain cells. Well, Donald Trump has shown many, many times that his intent was to steal the documents, that he knew he had them. He didn't care if they were properly stored, and he tried to maintain his hold on them through multiple rounds of the government trying to recover them. There is literally nothing like that in this record for Joe Biden. And so if the standard is gonna be what they say it is, that it's all about intent, frame of mind, motive, then no, this does not make it anywhere near impossible to charge Trump. Trump is the one with the frame of mind and the motive. He clearly wanted to steal it. But anyway, I think you were alluding to this, Yaz, earlier, that the media was going to like very eagerly, what about on this?
Yeah, and it's all very predictable. But first of all, I will say that I really enjoy your dramatic readings of Republican tweets. And I think if you're looking for a TikTok niche to capitalize on, I think that could maybe be it for you. But to the story, the difference here is the difference between making a mistake, confessing to it before being caught, and then taking steps to remedy the situation, which is what we saw with Joe Biden, compared to an intentionally committed crime. then the crime being denied, then refusing to cooperate with officials who are kind of giving you an out. If he had just given over the documents to the National Archive, he might have been okay, or he would have been a lot better off than he is currently. Definitely. And then once he was publicly caught and embarrassed by the whole situation, he claimed victimhood. That's not what we're seeing coming out of the Biden camp right now. The differences are very obvious, but the politicization of events are going to muddle what should happen. What will likely happen as a result of the revelation. It shouldn't, but it will.
I think you're 100% right. If the news update about the documents for Trump was that they requested them and 9 months after he left office, they gave them back and that was it, and they gave them all back, we would talk about it. And I know that if you're a Republican, you think that we would equally freak out compared to what we actually did. You're wrong. We wouldn't. It's the fact that they repeatedly tried to hold on to them. And then everyone on the right defending it, tripping over themselves to come up with some fake excuse for why it was acceptable. They're proving, by the way, that they did not think it is acceptable, because they're saying about Joe Biden, again, who did do the same thing, that it's not. He would have gotten away with very little of an issue. It wouldn't have stood up, certainly in comparison to things like the coup that he tried to pull or anything.
I mean, they definitely kind of dig themselves into their own holes with all the excuses that they make on one hand, and then they try to like undo those excuses whenever the same thing or similar something happens on the other side. So there's no consistency in their messaging, and then they just come off as huge hypocrites.
100%. Okay, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back though, the House has a speaker and now it has its first action. And I think it is incredibly revealing. We'll break that down after this. You're gonna be doing something new this Friday. What's that?
Yeah. We're gonna be on the main show. I'm gonna be on the main show. You're not gonna be there, will you, John?
Yeah, I'm gonna be on the main show as well.
Okay, well then we will be on the main show this Friday, Friday the 13th.
We're unfortunately not gonna be on the same hour, but I'll be leading the first hour. Yaz is gonna be on the second hour.
Well, I'll say hi to you on my way in. So
thank you. Oh wait, it's gonna be digital. Anyway, you're confusing the hell out of me. Everyone tune in and show support for Yaz's first appearance. Flood the comments and all that if you want to see Yaz return. That's how you
good comments, please. Thank you.
Or bad comments. The important thing is that there's comments. Any publicity is good publicity.
Okay, just anyway, be nice to me because I feel like I'm nice. So
you are pretty nice. I'll grant you that. Thank you. Okay, let's briefly talk about some breaking news. Breaking news as of this morning: Dianne Feinstein's got some competition in 2024 for her Senate seat in California, assuming she actually runs or is here to run. Obviously, she is on the older side. In any event, we don't know if she's gonna be retiring or running again. She doesn't know either, most likely. But the competition is here. It's Katie Porter, which is big news for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, Katie Porter as a senator, I think we can all agree would be a big improvement from Dianne Feinstein. There are of course other people who can indeed probably will run, so we're not done or anything like that. But she would be a big improvement. Also importantly, it does seem to be telegraphing, although things can change, that she is not intending to run for president in 2024. And again, just like with Dianne Feinstein, we don't know if she's gonna be running again. We don't know if Biden is gonna be. So all of this can change, but that's the news. Yaz, what do you think about the possibility of Senator Porter?
Yeah, what an amazing thing that would be for California. Congratulations on the possibility of Senator Katie Porter. Like in Texas, there's so little hope that we have as far as getting better senators. And again, I feel like I'm always apologizing for Ted Cruz. I'm very sorry for Ted Cruz, but here it's kind of a lost cause in Texas. So I wish better things, better fortunes for California.
Yes. Well, look, again, like I said, there are other people who potentially could run. There are other good progressives. I don't know if
I feel optimistic. I'm not usually optimistic, but I don't know. I feel like I want to be optimistic in this case. I want to put out all the good vibes for everybody else to have better senators than what we have here in Texas.
Look, I still hold out hope that someday Texas is going to get like their equivalent of like a John Fetterman or something. I think there is going to be someone who
he's out there or she is out there. I know it, I feel it, but it's very hard to to elevate those people to where they need to be. But we're working on it.
Or Jane Fetterman would be perfectly fine. Here, I don't know if maybe Ro Khanna's thinking. There are obviously other good progressives who might. If Feinstein steps down, there is going to be a big battle, I would assume. Katie Porter maybe is trying to make her mark by being the first, at least that I'm familiar with, to announce. She obviously has a pretty high profile. She survived her re-election bid. I think that she is popular. She's obviously not the most progressive member of the House or the extended squad or anything like that, but she's obviously more on the progressive side. She's great at drawing attention through her like cross-examination of witnesses and making viral moments. So these are all things that potentially could benefit her. Although I know some people will grade this news by being a bit disappointed that she won't be running for president. So when we've previously asked who people would like to see run for president, Katie Porter is often one of the members that our audience brings up. So that's the breaking news. We'll see how Dianne Feinstein responds or how a member of her staff responds for her. So stay tuned for that. And with that said, why don't we jump into more news? Oh geez, I'm way behind now. Okay, let's jump immediately to this.
I know the night is late, but when we come back, our very first bill will repeal the funding for 87,000 rioters.
Look at the smile on Marjorie. Yeah, first priority, no IRS. Oh, tax fraud's coming back, baby. And they did it. They said they would do it and they did it. And I think you can send a strong signal by the first thing that your party does when it gains power. The priority, not that we read into you, but that you say this is your priority. You're gonna do this. So they did it. They voted to take, I think, 72 of the $80 billion in additional funding for the IRS back. And Kevin McCarthy is very happy about this. He tweeted, House Republicans just voted unanimously to repeal the Democrats' army of 87,000 IRS agents. This was our very first act of the new Congress because government should work for you, not against you. Promises made, promises kept. But I'm not gonna tell you who the promises were to. The donors. So government should work for you, not against you, by taking away the additional funding for the IRS that was going to result in more audits on people making more than $400,000 a year. There are insane levels of tax fraud that millionaires and billionaires get away with that could bring in a bunch of money to fund social programs that would actually benefit regular working people. And they want to make sure that that money is not accrued. The rich continue to get away with no oversight whatsoever. They needed to send a strong signal, but not to their base, to their donors, that they got the message, they know who they've been put in power to defend, and that's what they just did. And yes, they had the gall to call it the Family and Small Business Taxpayer Protection Act. You can apparently call a bill literally whatever you want.
They just lie, like they just lie and mislead people, and it's so egregious that sometimes it like makes it's like flames on the side of your face kind of thing. But and like first of all, I don't know how less tax oversight is working for the people, meaning everyday Americans, right? Of course, when Kevin McCarthy is talking about the people in his tweet, the people that he's referencing is not me, not you, John. He's talking about his friends and his colleagues, and as you mentioned, his donors. He's talking about those people specifically who would financially benefit from a lack of tax oversight, largely at the expense of others, and it's not fair. And it's weird that they're celebrating it, but it makes sense that they would try to kind of launder the image of what they're doing by naming it something like that.
Yeah. 100%. People are asking if that was a History of the World reference. I assume that was a Clue reference.
It was a Clue reference. It was. Course. Yeah, it's Madeline. I love that movie.
Madeline Kahn. Oh, she was a treasure. Anyway, that's the bad news. Like, I think it's the bad news is that a party was put back into power that's only there to make sure that the rich can get away with absolutely insane tax fraud. The good news is it's not actually going to happen. They've took over the House, and so. By the way, this is a great preview not only of their priorities, but of how politics is largely going to work for the next 2 years. They're going to do something insane, lie about why they did it, and then it's not going to pass in the Senate. And even if it does, Biden can veto it. Now, I could be wrong. The Democrats in the Senate could support repealing this tax money that they voted to put into effect, and Biden could not veto it. If that happens, they've kind of given away the game at that point. It'll be pretty revelatory. I kind of doubt that's going to happen. And I also want to point out, I like taking the opportunity to reiterate to everyone that the positions that progressives hold are not radical. They're not insane. They're actually quite popular. Actually funding the IRS is supported by 2/3 of Americans, according to a University of Maryland poll from back in 2021. And it's pretty clear why. I think the people understand that the rich are getting away with tax fraud and they want that to be cracked down on. The right has, on its face, a bit of a difficult task to convince people to be against that. And they failed, by the way, as that poll makes clear. So if you recall, the way that they convinced people that there shouldn't be funding for the IRS is that the IRS is all gonna come to your door with guns and take your money. That's ridiculous. No sane person believes that, but that's the level of the lie that they need to roll out to defend the rich in this particular way.
And they have no shame about it. It's so weird how they can just say things that just aren't true. But on top of that, what's more shocking to me is that the people who are listening to these messages aren't saying, let me go Google that and see, because that sounds crazy to me. It is crazy, and they should be Googling it, or they should be looking into it, or asking people or something, but they just don't do that. And whenever we talk about things like discussing budgets and spending and cutting cost places, the conversation gets fraught so quickly because there's an incentive to pit issues that may or may not be related to one another against each other, right? So a lot of times it's like comparing apples to oranges. And a lot of times these tactics depend on emotional manipulation. In this case, though, it's not even manipulation, they're just lying to you, right? I mean, if you want to call that manipulation, sure, but it's just they're not even trying to work with what's already there. They're just coming up with something out of nowhere. Yeah. Like for example, nobody wants to seem unsupportive of the military, but that doesn't mean that they want funding from education to be cut. But the way it's presented to them is that we need money for the military, right? So you just go along with it.
The massive hole that they would blow in the budget with taking away the increased funding that's gonna come from it, they have a way that they're gonna plug that. And we're gonna be talking about that on tomorrow's show. We're gonna be looking ahead to some of the bigger legislative priorities of the right. But I wanna talk about another thing that they actually did. Again, they've accomplished like 2 things, and both of them are absolutely damning in terms of who they are, who they're actually there to protect. So let's jump to our C block right now. House Republicans accomplished something this week. They have passed a new set of rules to govern how the Office of Congressional Ethics is gonna function. And the end result of it is that it is gonna be incredibly difficult for that office to continue to provide oversight on ethics violations of members of Congress. And so if you're wondering, who are they there to protect? The answer is clear. First and foremost, themselves. They do not want to be investigated for violations of the Stock Act, insider trading, any of that sort of stuff. That group, by the way, the Office of Congressional Ethics, is tasked with investigating any allegations of misconduct against members of Congress. It then makes a determination as to whether those allegations are worth investigating further, at which point it makes a referral to the House Ethics Committee. So some things that have been investigated recently by it include several Republicans related to Stock Act violations. There were fines against former Representative Madison Cawthorn for improperly promoting a cryptocurrency. And there was a case opened against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we believe, over the Met Gala dress or something related to that. So it's a semi-independent body that investigates both Democrats and Republicans. But the most important word there is investigates, and that's not what these Republicans want. But while I don't like this news, there is one individual who's quite happy about it. George Santos says, I think it's fantastic. Well, what do you know? The dude who's lying constantly likes that the body that would investigate ethics violations is gonna have a lot of trouble working going forward. Yes, it's good to see like good news for George Santos finally.
George Santos, I feel like every time he's in the news for something, it just gets more and more ridiculous. I hope that maybe, they keep comparing him to that actor, Robbie McFerrin. I hope maybe he can like snag a recurring SNL gig out of all this. And maybe that would be like a way that Congress actually gives something back to the people. But as far as like between this and what they're doing with the IRS, it's so obvious what they're doing. And I don't know how any voting American could see this as a good thing. The only reason that I can think of is that they think congressional investigations are a waste of taxpayer dollars. But if there is sufficient evidence to merit an investigation for something, it's better for everyone in the long run. It's better for the country that wrongdoings by government officials are looked into. It's like what we were talking about earlier. Look into the stuff that seems shady.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what constitutes sufficient evidence is a highly political topic, even when it shouldn't be. And you would think that facts and data and history would hold some weight in those discussions, but none of them really seem to matter to a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%. Really fast to describe what they're changing and how that's going to affect how the office functions. So it reimposes 8-year term limits for the OC's board members made of former members of Congress. You might think, oh, well, they said they were for term limits. No, but understand, they're not for it because they want term limits. They're for it because of what the imposition of term limits would accomplish immediately. The practical effect would be the immediate removal of 3 of the 4 Democratic appointed board members. So they'd be gone immediately, which would make it so that they wouldn't have a functioning body. Now, eventually appointments can be replaced, but that could take months. And who knows how many illegal acts can be conducted by Congress in that time. Also, the rules prevent the office from hiring new staff after 1 month and require 4 board members to sign off on any staffing decisions, potentially allowing them to just filibuster literally any staffing. Now, why would that matter? Well, because the investigators are staff. If you stop them from hiring investigators, then the body can't function. This is so incredibly transparent. They just don't want to be investigated. Now, all of these things make it harder for the body to work. But George Santos doesn't want you to worry. He says, I think it just gives them more power. If he really said that, I don't know. We think we were talking to George Santos when we got that statement, but maybe it wasn't him. Anyway, the whole thing is so transparent. They want to stop taxation or effective taxation on the rich. They want to stop investigations on them. When they had been pressing Nancy Pelosi to do the ban on individual stock trading, we said pretty sure that that's just them trying to score points, that they're not actually going to support that once they get into office. And you'll notice that they have not pushed for that. And it seems like if you're trying to make the Stock Act impossible to enforce, you're probably not going to push for that stock ban. But maybe I'm wrong, Yas. Maybe they'll eventually do it.
The quote from George Santos, who like, I don't know, I think it gives them more. I feel like on programs like this one, I go out of my way to make sure that the things I'm saying are backed up with evidence, or I read it somewhere and like it's sourced, right? Like I do that work for everyone watching right now. But these Congress people are just like, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it's good. And then that's it. Who cares what George Santos has to say about anything at this point? I don't know why he's even saying any. If I was George Santos, wouldn't it be better to just like not be commenting right now and like kind of lay low? But that's not what we're seeing.
Also, I just want to show this graphic 7 for 2 reasons. One, just because we don't have time to talk about it, but I want to make sure that you know that one of his paid campaign staffers pretended to be Kevin McCarthy's chief of staff to raise money, which is just chef's kiss that a guy hired by George Santos is pretending to be someone else. But also, if you're George Santos, can we go back to that picture? If you're George Santos and you're going to be constantly lying in a way like about the Holocaust and 9/11 and all that, don't allow yourself to be photographed doing the evil like Mr. Burns hands. Like you're making it too easy for us at that point. Just do normal stuff, maybe.
I don't think he even knows what normal is anymore. I think normal is just like so far gone, so far behind him that he's just this person now sitting in Congress of all places. So this is going to be an interesting year.
It is. Okay. We got more news to get to, including updates on what the hell is going on in Brazil. We'll have that for you after this. Okay, everybody, lots to get to. Let's jump into this. Just yesterday, thousands of protesters at multiple sites, including the capital of Brazil, were marching in the streets, declaring no amnesty for those who tried to overthrow the government. For our initial reaction to the Brazilian insurrection, I don't know if we have a fancy name that we're calling it. We did cover it yesterday. You can watch Francesca's content on that on the channel. But for now, Protesters were interviewed saying things like, these people need to be punished. The people who ordered it need to be punished. Those who gave money for it need to be punished. They don't represent Brazil. We represent Brazil. And by the way, Lula da Silva said that they are going to be prosecuting those who did it. Also, threw some accusations around to other people who might have been sort of standing by as it went on, including potentially members of the military, saying people were openly calling for a coup outside the barracks and nothing was done. No general lifted a finger to tell them they could not do that. I don't have enough information to know who in the military might have been involved or where we go from here on that part of it. But we do know that Brazilian police have said that they have already detained an estimated 1,500 people. And it's looking like at least hundreds of them are going to be charged. We'll have to see. We've got other updates as well, but Yaz, I know you like to keep abreast of international news. What did you make of that incident as it was unfolding?
It's embarrassing for these rioters to have first attempted to replicate a failed coup, but it's embarrassing for us that Brazil's response to it was so much better than ours. They've already detained 1,500 people, and they called out the predecessor for his role in inciting the violence in no uncertain terms. And then on top of that, the footage that we just saw was people protesting because they want something done about it. What an amazing display of what's going on down there and the action of the people. And it's what the protester was saying. These people, these insurrectionists, the rioters, they don't represent the government, they don't represent the people. Lula da Silva was democratically elected to be the president. Jair Bolsonaro, he was rightfully ousted from the position. He's in Florida right now, in a hospital in Florida, no less. But everything that's happening is silly. And it's interesting when you look at this from a global perspective, when you look at the impacts of propaganda on people, especially in terms of predictability, right? The same lies that triggered an insurrection in our capital 2 years ago triggered this one in Brazil. The same doubt, the same discord, the same conspiracies, the same rhetoric, right? Not only that, but these tactics have been used on populations throughout history, right?
Yeah.
So why is it so hard first to recognize these tactics when they're being used and then to call them out? I feel like people like you and I maybe, we would get attacked for being hyperbolic whenever we would say, this is what's happening, this is propaganda, we've seen this before, especially when we're presenting supporting evidence, right? Historical evidence. People seem to like being ignorant because it's comfortable, so they would kind of reject those accusations. But these insurrectionists, they don't even look comfortable. They're angry and they feel like they're the ones who are being subjected to injustices, but the injustices are overblown. And their feelings of helplessness are being exploited by politicians and people like Steve Bannon. And I think we're gonna talk about that now.
Yeah, briefly. And yeah, like I'm sure, I don't know exactly how the issues that they have compare to those who try to do the insurrection here, but then there's real things that they have been abused by the system. Some have been left behind, and then that is exploited by the exact people who are doing that along the way. These are people who are being trained to be opposed fundamentally to democracy, the idea that people should choose their leaders. They're being convinced that that is a luxury of a previous time. No, now we need the strong fascist leader. And it doesn't matter if they win elections. It might be preferable, but they certainly shouldn't do anything to win elections. One would think you could save a lot of trouble in these far right parties by trying at least a little bit to be likable, popular, support things that the population actually likes. Then you wouldn't have to do all of these coups. Wouldn't that be something? And so, no, we should be worried about this. This is a movement. Donald Trump has talked favorably about Bolsonaro. The right is defending him right now, as we're gonna turn to in just a second. And these are just two countries. There are other countries that they feel ideologically affiliated with where the war against democracy is continuing. And I don't know how many coups we need before people accept that. But that said, as you said, Bolsonaro's in a hospital for abdominal pain or whatever. I cannot be clear enough about how little I care about that. Weirdly enough, he just doesn't have anything to say about the coup. I guess he's busy with the abdominal stuff. I guess he just can't opine. He fled the country in advance of this, and he definitely didn't know about it beforehand, and now he has nothing to say about it. Anyway, he's got some support coming from media figures here in the US. Let's jump into this video.
So thanks to what was very clearly a rigged election, a convicted criminal called Lula da Silva is now the president of the most important country in South America. Millions of people in Brazil understand exactly what happened. They know that their democracy has been hijacked, possibly forever. But there's not much they can do about that. Lula may be a criminal, in fact he is, but he has the full support of both the Biden administration and the Chinese government. So yesterday, in frustration, a group of Brazilian protesters swarmed their legislature. What's happened in Brazil is being likened to January 6th, and of course populist leaders in this country are being blamed for it. Oh, it was Trump and Steve Bannon who did it. That's not true, but even if it were true, it would be just the tail end of the story. It would be the result of something that happened before. So the obvious question is, why are protesters in Brazil so angry? Well, they're angry because the new Lula government has eliminated their most basic civil liberties. Lula is working to turn Brazil into a Chinese-style dictatorship, and he's doing it very quickly with maximum aggression. Now, our media don't want to talk about that. They refuse to. Why? Well, for reasons that should make you very nervous.
Okay, so there's a lot at issue there. Him simply saying that it was rigged, no evidence of that. He doesn't care. He says the same things about elections here in the US. They lose elections and then they lie about why they lost. That's just the script. And think about that. He is saying they're just a group of protesters. They swarmed. That was the roughest language he would use for what thousands of people smashing and occupying buildings. That's the language that he used. He's not willing to actually describe to people what happened there in the same way that he's gone basically 2 years now since January 6th, doing everything he can to never allow one frame of the actual footage of the damage that was done in the Capitol on January 6th to be displayed. He's lying to his audience as he was. And he knows what he wants. What he wants is for Bolsonaro to be put back in power despite legitimately losing the election. What he wants is a right-wing dictatorship, a non-democratic coronation of a right-wing leader. But he understands that they're still supposed to pretend that democracy is a good thing at this point. So he is pitching overthrowing the democratically elected government as the true defense of democracy. That allowing the guy that the people voted for to stay in power, that's a Chinese-style dictatorship. That's how that actually works. No, the whole thing is insane. The fact that him and people like Steve Bannon are openly saying that they don't have an issue, by the way, the fact that Bolsonaro fled, that he said before the election that he was going to claim that it was stolen, that he has fled in anticipation of the coup, ready to sweep back in if they were able to overthrow the government. They're fine with all of this. And that should worry you for reasons that should be apparent. To pull a Tucker Carlson. Yas, what are your thoughts?
God, Tucker Carlson, and this is another incident like what we were talking about earlier on the show, where they just say something and like part of you is like, is that real or did he just make any of that up? Like the idea that Lula da Silva's government is trying to create some kind of communist China-like government in Brazil. I don't think we've seen really any evidence of that. But you're right, John, what you were saying earlier, the harder that you have to force an issue, to force people to kind of concede to your demands, the more you have to ask, why are you working so hard to antagonize people, to trick people? And like, how hard would it be to just concede to some of their demands if you really wanted to win an election legitimately, right? Just concede to some of their demands or appeal to some of their interests, and people will be much more willing to let you lead them. But these people, they're authoritarians, they're arrogant. They don't feel like they should concede anything, and they feel entitled to power even when they decidedly have not won the democratic elections from the people.
Yeah, and what's amazing, to draw another comparison between the attempted coup here and there, is that in 2020 in America and with Lula in Brazil, they were able to rig the election despite them being out of power at the time. Somehow they rigged the system that was ruled over at that point by the right winger. So Lula somehow took control of all of this stuff despite not having any power in Brazil. And here in the US, Biden, who was out of power, was able to do that. And it was super insidious how he did it. He was able to go into some states that were controlled by Republicans and rig their state elections somehow. Weird, it makes you think that maybe this is all BS. Yeah, no, the whole thing is made up. This should be just as predictable as any other reactionary response to mild bits of progress. They want to be back in power. They want to destroy the Amazon. They want to extract wealth from the people of Brazil. He wants to support those systems here in the US and abroad. That's who Tucker Carlson is. Anyway, unfortunately, we are out of time for our first hour. Looks like that next story is gonna have to wait until tomorrow, but there is a lot more to come in the aftermath. So don't go anywhere. Yas and I will be back after this. Jason Ray says, so the GOP, just wait for it, defunded the ethics police. Weird. Yeah, that's the sort of defunding the police they can get behind.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.